A narcissist can mark you before you even realize there was a test, and it usually starts smaller than you think. Not with love bombing, not with obvious control, not with some dramatic moment where everything suddenly becomes clear. It starts with one quiet compliance scan. They do something slightly disrespectful, then they watch. Maybe it is a joke that lands a little too hard. Maybe it is a comment that makes you pause. Maybe they interrupt you, dismiss you, or make you feel like you are overreacting before you have even said anything. And in that moment, they are not just listening to your words, they are watching your reaction. Do you correct it, or do you explain it away? Do you say something, or do you carry the discomfort just to keep the peace? Because if you laugh it off, stay silent, over-explain, or make yourself responsible for the awkwardness they created, they learn something fast. You may be a low-friction target. That is the first hidden sign. The friction injection. They create a small moment where your internal alarm goes off, then they study what you do next. Not because the moment is huge, but because it is just uncomfortable enough to test you, small enough to deny, but sharp enough to see where you break. They are not looking for a fight, they are looking for your limit, and this is where most people miss it. Because the disrespect is small, you tell yourself not to make it a big deal. You think, maybe they did not mean it that way, maybe I am being sensitive, and maybe I should just let this one go. But that is exactly why the test works. A narcissist does not need the first breach to be obvious. They only need it to be just vague enough that you start defending them against your own instinct. And once you do that, they learn the first thing they need to know. You can be pushed, then talked into calling it peace. But the scan is not only about what they can do to you, it is about what they can make you do for them. That is the second hidden sign, the liability scan. This is when they bring you a crisis too early. A painful story, a messy situation, a conflict where everyone else is cruel, jealous, unfair, or impossible. And at first it may feel like trust. They are opening up. They are being vulnerable. They are showing you a side of themselves no one else understands. But slow down, because sometimes they are not sharing pain. They are handing you a job. They want to see if their problem quickly becomes your responsibility. Maybe you barely know them, but suddenly you feel pulled into their chaos. You feel like you need to calm them down, explain them, defend them, prove you are not cold, prove you are not like the people who hurt them. That is the scan. They are checking whether your compassion turns into labor, because some people can care and still keep a boundary. But others hear pain and immediately become the repair crew. They start fixing. They start rescuing. They start making excuses. They start carrying emotional weight that does not belong to them. And to a narcissist, that is valuable. Not because they admire your heart, because they found someone who may absorb the cost of their instability. That is the difference. A healthy person may share a struggle and still respect your limits. A dangerous person shares a struggle and quietly studies whether your limits disappear. So listen carefully when someone you barely trust starts handing you emotional debt. The issue is not that people have problems. Everyone has problems. The issue is when their problem becomes your assignment. That is not connection. That is a transfer of burden. And if you accept it too early, they learn they can move pressure from their life into yours, and you may call that seal. The third hidden sign is the information security audit. This one can feel like intimacy. That is why it is dangerous. They ask questions that feel deep, personal, meaningful, even flattering. They want to know about your past relationship, your family, your money, your fears, who hurt you, what still makes you react, the skeletons in your closet, the family secrets you do not tell anyone, the things you are actually ashamed of. And yes, in the right relationship over time, those conversations can be normal. But early on, before trust has been earned, those questions can become a breach. Because the question is not always asked to know you. Sometimes it is asked to map you. A narcissist wants to know where the leverage is. What makes you explain yourself? What makes you apologize fast? What makes you chase? What makes you quiet? What makes you prove your value? And if you hand over that information too quickly, you may think you are building closeness, while they are building a control file. That is why fast intimacy can be so confusing. It feels like being seen. But being seen is not the same as being safe. Someone can study you without caring for you. Someone can understand your wound and still use it as a handle. So the diagnostic is simple. Do they earn access slowly, or do they rush into the private rooms of your life before they have proven they can be trusted with the key? If you feel yourself revealing more than you planned, faster than you normally would, pause. Access without trust is not intimacy, it is exposure, and exposure in the wrong hands becomes leverage. If you are being scanned, you are not being liked. You are being inventoried. That may sound harsh, but think about how it feels when someone knows exactly what hurts you, and somehow that same thing keeps showing up later in arguments, jokes, silence, guilt, or pressure. That is not an accident. They are not looking for a partner, a friend, or an equal. They are looking for a low-maintenance resource that helps stabilize their own lack of status. And if you do not fail the scan early, you may pay the maintenance cost later. The fourth hidden sign is public compliance verification. This is where the test leaves private conversation and enters the room. They make a small joke at your expense. They correct you when correction was not needed. They interrupt you. They tell a story where you look foolish. They say it with a smile, so if you react, you look like the problem. And again, the point is not only the insult, the point is the measurement. They are testing whether you value social peace more than self-respect. Will you subsidize their status with your silence? Will you laugh along because everyone else is laughing? Will you let them downgrade you publicly because being a good sport feels safer than standing your ground? That is the status audit. And this one matters because narcissists care deeply about positioning. They want to know where they stand, where you stand, and whether they can move you lower without paying a price. If they can lower you in public and you help them keep the room comfortable, they learn they have public access. They can use other people as witnesses. They can turn your silence into permission. They can train the room to see you as smaller. That is why the first public downgrade matters. Not because every joke needs a speech, not because you need to fight over every comment, but because you need to know what is being tested. A healthy person may joke, notice it landed wrong, and repair. A dangerous person watches the landing. They watch whether you shrink. They watch whether you look embarrassed. They watch whether you laugh while something inside you says that was not okay. And if you keep choosing social peace while they keep taking status, the pattern will grow, because you are not just protecting the room. You may be funding their position in it. The fifth hidden sign is the no diagnostic. This is the reveal. Because eventually you say no. Maybe it is a small no. You cannot meet today. You do not want to answer that question. You are not comfortable with that joke. You are not available to help with their crisis. You need time. You disagree. You pause, and then the warmth changes. This is the mask drop diagnostic. When you say no, the resource harvester realizes they are not going to get what they came for. Watch the response. Not the speech, the response. Sometimes it is silence, coldness, disappointment, a little withdrawal, a guilt-heavy comment, a look that says, "After everything I shared with you, this is how you treat me." That moment tells you more than the charming moments ever did, because the test was never whether they liked you when you gave access. The test is what happens when access is denied. A healthy person may feel disappointed, but they can still respect the boundary. A narcissist often treats the boundary like betrayal, because in their mind your access was already assigned. Your time, your energy, your attention, your silence, your status, somewhere along the way, they started acting like those things belonged to them. So when you say no, you are not just declining a request, you are interrupting the system they thought they were building. That is why the reaction can feel so strange. It does not match the size of the number. You said you were busy, and they act abandoned. You asked for space, and they act insulted. You corrected disrespect, and suddenly you have changed. That is the no diagnostic. It reveals whether the connection was built on mutual respect or quiet access. And once you see that, do not rush to explain it away, because the whole scan depends on your willingness to keep translating disrespect into misunderstanding. That is the trap. They cross a line, and you become the interpreter. They create pressure, and you become the manager. They ask for private information, and you call it closeness. They lower you in public, and you protect the mood. They punish your no, and you start wondering whether you were too harsh. That is how a person becomes marked without realizing it. Not in one dramatic moment, but through a series of small confirmations. Can I move you? Can I make you carry what belongs to me? Can I get private information before I have earned trust? Can I lower your status in front of others? Can I punish your boundary and make you chase repair? If the answer keeps coming back yes, the scan is complete. And this is the part to remember. Being kind does not make you weak. Being forgiving does not make you foolish. Having empathy does not make you broken. But when those traits operate without discernment, the wrong person can treat them like open doors. The goal is not to become cold. The goal is to stop being easy to inventory. So the next time something feels small but strangely expensive, pay attention. The first disrespect. The sudden crisis. The early personal question. The public joke that lowers you. The punishment after a small no. Those are not random details, they are diagnostics. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is not argue, explain, or prove your goodness. It is to fail the scan. Do not over-explain the breach. Do not absorb the cost. Do not hand over private leverage before trust is earned. Do not protect someone's public image while they quietly damage yours. And do not chase warmth from someone who only gives it back when you reopen access, because a narcissist may mark you quietly, but you do not have to remain available. Spotting the mark is just the first step. To survive the harvest, you need to learn the anti-targeting protocol. How to fail a narcissist's compliance scan. Because the real power is learning how to become the kind of person their scan cannot use. Watch the next video on the screen for the next briefing in the series.